بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to all of you to our fourth and final session on Imam Ibn al Jawzi's al-khatir, the capturing of thoughts. And it's been quite a journey where we've tried to thematically structure the work and go through those aspects which relate most directly to how we can lead our lives as Muslims, and also try to purify our hearts and focus on the divine realities, the haqa'iq of life and reality itself. So continuing on with our ways of living, we turn to discussion 141 in the book, which is that true obedience is complying with Allah's commands and avoiding his prohibitions. Allah Ta'ala is closer to his slaves than their jugular veins, as it mentions in the Quran, yet he defined the relation between him and his slaves to be like how a person deals with a person far away from himself. He ordered his slaves to visit his house in Mecca and raise their hands to ask him for what they want. The hearts of the ignorant sense the distance, and so they fall in sins, because if they were mindful of Allah's presence, as if they could see him, they would have abstained from sins. In contrast, the heedful ones, the ones who maintain Allah's boundaries, know that he is close to them, and so they become mindful of him, and that makes them refrain from transgressing his boundaries. If they were not made incapable of seeing him in reality in this life, they would not have stretched their hands to consume a single bite of haram food, or refrained their eyes from looking at anything wrong. The latter meaning manifests in the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith in Sahih Muslim. My heart sometimes becomes absent from the remembrance of Allah. Obedience of Allah is not as what most of the ignorant presume, thinking it is about praying and fasting only. It is in fact to abide by Allah's entire ordinance, i.e. performing all of his orders and abstaining from all of his prohibitions. This is the foundational and principal rule. Many worshippers happen to be far from Allah despite their worship, because they neglect this great principle and oppose the rules of religion by opposing the orders and committing the forbidden. The one with sound understanding who investigates the truth is he who holds the forehead of his own accountability, muhasabah, and starts putting him into account. Therefore, he performs what Allah orders and avoids what Allah forbids. If he was blessed enough to perform optional acts of worship, nawafil, that will be good. Otherwise, it will not harm him not doing so. So here Ibn al Jawzi is pointing to the importance of really sticking to the fara'id, the obligations, even if that means you eschew some of the nawafil, because that won't harm you. But in order to do some of the fara'id, but then to engage in the haram, even if you do lots of nawafil, is potentially more dangerous for you. And Ibn al Jawzi and Ghazali and Yahya talk about how this is sometimes the deception of the shaitan on the believer, that they will engage in a great deal of nawafil whilst neglecting some of the rules, because their shaitan or their self will try and trick them into thinking that the nawafil will be sufficient to cover over the fact that they've done the haram. And so we ask Allah for the tawfiq to avoid this deception. And then we can turn to the discussion on one who reforms his interior, his inner self. Allah elevates his rank. When the intent of a scholar is correct, then one who is under responsibility finds comfort in this. Many scholars disdain from saying, I do not know, allowing themselves to protect their position by issuing verdicts, fatwa, so it will not be said that they were ignorant from answering the question, although they may not be certain of their answer. This is the height of betrayal. It is narrated that a person asked Imam Malik about a matter, and he replied, "I do not know." The man said, "I have traveled the whole land to meet you for this." Imam Malik stated, "Return to your city and tell the people that I asked Imam Malik, and he replied, I do not know." Look at this person and his intelligence, aql, how comfortably he absolved himself of the responsibility and became safe before Allah the Almighty. On the other hand, if their scholar's goal is attaining position, then their hearts are in other people's hands. And here I would say that this isn't just a lesson for the ulama or the scholars, this is also a lesson for us now, because we live in this social media age where so many people want to put forward their own opinion on what is the religion, and this is halal, and this is haram, and this is sunnah, and this is bid'ah, and on so many fronts. And so therefore, this is advice to all of us, that just to say you don't know, even if your teacher or your scholar has one position, it might be that there are other valid scholars who have different positions, which are equally valid. So we should all control ourselves and not to be afraid to say we don't know. Ibn al Jawzi, rahimahullah, continues, "I have seen those who pray, salah, fast, and remain quiet abundantly. They show humility in themselves and in their clothing. However, their hearts reveal everything, and their value in the hearts of people is otherwise. I have also seen those who wear expensive clothing. They are not that devoted, nor of those committing voluntary acts of worship in abundance, yet the hearts of people fall in love with them. I pondered over the reason and found none but their interior, the purity of the inner self. One who has reformed his interior, the fragrance of his grace, fadl, emits everywhere, and the heart spread his sweet smell everywhere. So fear Allah regarding the inner feelings, sara'ir, because having a good exterior on its own cannot benefit while the interior is corrupt." And then Ibn al Jawzi talks about cautioning against enmity and its dangers. He says, "Do not show enmity towards anyone, for you are not safe from the vicissitudes of time. Amongst the experiences of life that have benefited me is the fact that it is not appropriate for anyone to show enmity, hatred, towards anyone else as much as one can forbear, because he will most likely have a need for him, whatever his own position may be. A person may perceive that he may not necessitate the like of him at any time. Yet how many belittled men who have been needed to requisite in the past." So what he's talking about here is dismissing people without any reason and having hatred towards them without any reason, because you think that they will not benefit you now. But yet then time changes and you can find yourself in need of such a person. So this is a general exhortation to treat people well. So he then continues, "If the need is not realized through this person in acquiring an interest, a benefit, contrarily, he may be required to prevent a harm instead. So this person might not in the future benefit you, but they might be able to prevent a harm reaching you. In my lifetime, I have necessitated showing kindness to a group of people about whom it never crossed that a need will occur later to show kindness to them," meaning he shows kindness to everyone, not on the thought that, oh, should I be good to this person because in the future they will then give me a benefit. Know that showing enmity brings about harm from where one does not know. One who harbors enmity is just like one who draws the sword out from the sheath, awaiting the place to strike, wherein sometimes a hidden place to strike becomes evident from him, even if one who is wearing armor and tries to conceal himself, ultimately allowing the enemy the opportunity to strike. Therefore, it is important for one living in this world not to reveal enmity to anyone, for the reason I provided, because of each necessitating the other and because the power of causing harm by some against others. This chapter is beneficial, whose benefit becomes apparent for a human with the changing of times. And so therefore we should take this lesson that we should be good to everyone, and not just because we're thinking of what benefit can we get from them or what harm can they prevent from us in the future, but just simply as a open-hearted believer. Then we have a discussion on asking for afiyah, well-being, and its importance. Ibn al Jawzi talks about, fortunate is he who humbles himself and asks for his well-being from Allah. It is narrated that Hallaj, the Sufi, used to sit in the sun in severe heat, sweating. An intelligent person passed by him and said, foolish, this is an attempt to challenge Allah. What a beautiful statement he made. This is because that person has not placed Shari'i responsibility except on those things that are against human interests, and sometimes the doer is put into such hardship that he cannot bear to remain patient. Sabr. The foolish ignorant, al-jahil al-ahmaq, who tries to challenge or asks for affliction, his actions are just like what another fool said, in whatever you want to test me, test me. The fortunate is he who humbly asks from Allah to grant him well-being, afiyah. The person may not be given a complete well-being, since tests are meant to occur, yet an intelligent person continues to ask for wholesome well-being. Thus, that well-being overpowers most of his state, allowing him to exercise patience on small amounts of tests received. It is generally important for a person to realize that there is a clear and simple way towards his desired ambitions. For every sip of water, there is a catch in the throat, and for every morsel, a particle is stuck in the throat. How many have loved the worldly life in the past, but there is no way leading to reunion? In reality, patience is not born except on fate, and thus the fate barely runs in parallel to the intentions of the self. An intelligent person, aqil, persuades himself to be patient by taking into account the promise of reward and facilitation of the matter. When the time of affliction goes by without complaint, he then supplicates to Allah, begging for well-being. As for one who is stubborn, he has never recognized Allah. We seek his protection from being ignorant about him and ask from him to grant us his recognition. Verily, he is the most honorable and the answerer of prayers. Now we turn to a discussion on contemplation is the source of success. And abandoning it is the reason for corruption. I have thought about righteous people and evil people. I found that the reason behind righteousness is contemplation, fikr, and the reason behind evil is neglecting to contemplate. A wise person contemplates and realizes that there must be a creator who needs to be obeyed, who must be obeyed, not that he needs to be obeyed, but that you need to obey him. He contemplates the miracles, mu'jizat of the Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and so surrenders to the true religion. So he looks into whatever brings him closer to Allah. If he faces difficulty in memorizing knowledge, he contemplates its fruits so it becomes easier for him to memorize it. The same is true if he faces difficulty in praying the night prayer. He's talking about tahajjud here. If he confronts something despicable, He contemplates the end result of following his desires, how the pleasurable moments go away while shame remains, a topic we discussed in previous session. So it becomes easy for him to deflect his desires and to follow them. And if he wants to take revenge, he remembers the reward of patience, sabr, and how an angry person regrets the action he commits in a state of anger, ghadab. And he contemplates how short life is. So he takes advantage of life by gaining virtue, thus achieving his goals. As for he who is oblivious, he is short-sighted, and he only sees the immediate gratification. He doesn't see what will happen in the next life or what could happen in the long term. So regarding these short-sighted people, he says, some of them contemplated the creator and creation, but ended up denying him and stopped contemplating. They also denied the messengers and the religion they brought. They only look at whatever is near to them without contemplating its beginning and ending. All they know about food is how to eat it. Had they thought about its origin and how it preserves human bodies, they would have known the reality of things. They never look at the outcome of lusts, shahawat, they fulfill. They only think about the immediate pleasures, causing them to be punished and disgraced. Fulfilling lusts hastily often causes one to miss out on virtue and to gain shamefulness. This is all caused by not contemplating the future outcome of things, which is what the mind and intellect demands. Contemplation is praiseworthy, while chasing lusts is condemned. We ask Allah to keep us astute and grant us insight in order to figure the end results and to make us realize the reality of virtue and shame. He is indeed able to do so. Then we have a discussion on seeking Allah's pleasure at the expense of people's anger, and Allah will protect him from them. A wise man preserves what Allah has ordered, even if doing so results in angering people. In fact, he who seeks people's pleasure by angering Allah, then Allah will flip people's hearts against him. And he then has a couple of stories from kings that are narrated where this happens. And he says there are many of these stories. A person must intend to obey Allah even if that resulted in angering people, because he will end up getting humiliated and the same people he tried to please will turn against him. So he will lose from both ends. And then returning to a discussion that we've had before, the importance of surrendering, whereby he talks about how true belief requires surrendering and contentment. A true believer, mu'min, is not one who merely performs ritualistic worship, ibadat, and avoids prohibitions. Rather, he is one who has perfected his belief, kamil al-iman. He never objects to Allah's decree. The more hardship he undergoes, the stronger his belief and submission becomes. He might pray and his prayer is not answered, yet his belief is never affected, for he realizes he is owned and that his master directs him as he pleases. If he ever objects, then he exits the state of servitude, maqam al-ubudiyya, and enters the state of debate, which is what happened to Iblis. The effect of strong faith becomes clear at the time of hardship, bala. Some people might wonder why Allah allowed for Prophet Yahya alayhi salam to be slaughtered by an evil person and for other prophets and believers to be harmed. It would be a form of disbelief, kufr, to assume that Allah is unable to defend the prophets. The only thing that can be done is to surrender to the owner. He feeds some disbelievers, kuffar, and starves some believers, mu'minun. He keeps some wrongdoers, fasiqun, healthy, and some among the righteous, muttaqeen, ill. Prophet Yaqub cried over his missing son for 80 years and never lost hope. When his second son was taken, he said, May Allah return them both to me. Prophet Musa alayhi salam made dua against Fir'aun, but was only answered 40 years later. Although Fir'aun used to kill prophets and he crucified the magicians who believed in Musa and severed their hands. Many calamities strike a noble person only for him to increase in his surrendering, taslim, and contentment, rida. This is when we understand the verse, radiyallahu anhum. Allah is well pleased with them, from Al-Bayyinah. Al-Hasan al-Basri said, people behave the same during good times, but they differ in times of hardship. So when times are good, everyone behaves the same. In times of hardship, that's when you really see who's who. And then we have a discussion on the path to perfection and its causes. Perfection, kamil, is rare and dear. The first cause of attaining perfection is for body parts to be proportional, i.e. outward appearance, and for the inside, the heart and soul, to be good. An evidence for the perfection of body figure is good appearance, khalq, and having good manners, khuluq. And the proof for the goodness, husn, of one's inside is having good habits and manners, akhlaq. As for habits, they are chastity, iffa, honesty, and refraining from ignorance, jahl, and greed, sharh. Good manners include generosity, karam, altruism, ithar, concealing faults, sitr al-uyub, presenting virtuous deeds first, and forgiving the ignorant. He who is granted these attributes will be elevated to the status of perfection, and he will demonstrate the most noble of characteristics. If any of these attributes are lacking, then he will equally be far from perfection. Ibn al Jawzi then warns us about keeping modesty so that we maintain protection from people's jealousy and the gloating of others. It is part of human nature to want to excel over others of the same kind. A person therefore conceals any misfortune that strikes him in order not to be seen as deficient. A person in need acts with pride in order for others not to see him with the eye of mercy. And a sick person acts healthy in order for healthy people not to pity or make fun of him. When Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw his companions suffering from fever upon entering Makkah, he said, "May Allah have mercy upon he who demonstrates toughness," in Bukhari and Muslim. The companions jogged while making tawaf of the Kaaba. They did rami. This was so their enemy does not gloat. Nowadays, the cause for rami no longer exists, yet the ruling remains. When some people wanted to visit Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu during his final illness, he asked his family members to sit him up firmly, showing healthiness. After his visitors left, he said, "With my perseverance, I show my enemies that I do not crumble by afflictions of time. When death shows its paws, then I have found no omen to work properly." Wise men have always demonstrated toughness during times of hardship, poverty, and affliction in order to prevent being stricken with the gloating of enemies, for it is harsher than any other affliction. A wise poor person used to show that he is wealthy, and a sick person used to show that he is healthy. Another point worth contemplating is that a person might brag about his wealth and become stricken with the evil eye, so his wealth will not compensate for this affliction. An evil eye only afflicts when seeing something pleasant, and it is the trait of a person who is bad-natured. So a person must demonstrate wellness just enough not to be stricken with the evil eye. Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam told his sons in Surah Yusuf, Do not enter from the same entrance, instead enter from various entrances. And he said this out of fear that they get stricken with the evil eye. Let this be understood, for it aids the one who contemplates. Now we have a discussion on disciplining the self to be humble and having humility in front of Allah. I contemplated what has been narrated from the Prophet ﷺ when he wore a ring, but then removed it and threw it away as he disliked to be adorned with it. So he explained, I was too busy seeing you all busy, i.e. fascinated, looking at it and seeing myself how much I liked it. Narrated in Musnad Ahmad as well as Nasai. And some of the scholars say that it is Sahih. I also contemplated what he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, said, as narrated in Bukhari. While a man was walking, dragging his dress with pride, he was caused to be swallowed by the earth and will go on sinking in it till the day of resurrection. I understood then that a believer should not wear a garment or any adornment he likes too much, because that will make him have pride in himself, while the self, the nafs, should always be in humility before its Lord. The scholars of Bani Israel used to walk using sticks, so they did not walk in an arrogant or proud way. And the mother of the believers, Aisha radiallahu anha, wore a garment once that she liked so much, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her, Allah will not look at you while you are in such a state. Narrated in Bukhari and Muslim. And when the Prophet ﷺ wore a colorful garment, he said, I was distracted with this garment while praying. Narrated again by Bukhari and Muslim. All this should make us avoid such types of adornment and beautification, and all that which may provoke pride, fakhr, arrogance, ujub, and any sense of superiority, which explains why it is made forbidden to wear silk for men. Based on this, wearing the garments that have patches that ascetics wear and flash to the public may bring forth such condemnable feelings, either due to the beauty of such a garment or due to the signs of asceticism, zuhud, it indicates. The same is the case with wearing rings or having extra long sleeves or wearing different types of shoes. He's talking to his age. We have to apply these words to our own age to understand how they are relevant. I do not say that such clothes are forbidden, but rather I say wearing such types of clothes may bring forth forbidden pride or arrogance. That being said, an intelligent person should heed the advice I have mentioned to ward off anything that may cause evil or lead to harm. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma once mounted a fast camel, and he liked how fast it was, so he got off and asked his servant Nafi' to release him and put it in the camels allocated to be slaughtered in Makkah on Hajj. Again, applying this same principle. Then we have a discussion on taking an example from ourselves. So looking at ourselves and being admonished by the lessons we learn. Ibn al Jawzi says, rahimahullah, I wonder at him who says, go visit the graveyard and let the deceased be a good reminder for you. While he seems to forget that within himself exists a graveyard that should suffice him in looking for other reminders. Particularly when the person is aged, he becomes weak in desires, has a powerless body. His senses become weak, his energy has depleted, and his hair is grey. Hence, he should take an example of what he lost and suffice with it. So he's obviously not saying here not to visit the graves and not to take admonition, but what he's trying to do is turn the tables on people so they realize that the real lesson is actually you looking within yourself and taking a lesson from that. And we have a discussion on good manners reveal gentleness of body and clarity of soul. So he has this long section about hunting dogs and watching urban dogs and hunting dogs. And so now he then goes on to say how the wise believer does not care for those who envy him, nor gives them any regard, because each of them is in a different valley. One envies the other on worldly matters, while the other is only concerned with the hereafter. How far apart are these two valleys? So therefore, his advice is not to concern yourself with those who envy you, because your focus should be on the next world, whereas this person is focused on this world. And so that should be an admonishment for you. And now let us finish with a series of sections that Ibn al Jawzi has on patience, especially as now we're coming to the end of Ramadan. And so what we want, inshallah, if we found any goodness in this month, is to have the patience to remain on it when we leave the month. So it's not just that we are Ramadan Muslims and good for this month, but rather, once we exit the month, we are able to have patience on the obedience that we acquired in this month. Inshallah. We ask Allah for tawfiq. Again, Ibn al Jawzi talks about, do not panic if the answer to your prayer is delayed. I have noticed that it is a trial, bala, when a believer invokes Allah, but his supplication, dua, is not answered, even though he may repeat it for a long time. In such case, he should understand that this is a test that requires him to be patient. The whispers and suggestive thoughts that come to mind when the supplication of a person is delayed is a kind of sickness, marad, that requires treatment. I myself have been exposed to this kind of test. Once I had a calamity, and so I invoked Allah to remove this calamity, but my prayers were not answered, though I invoked him excessively. This made the shaitan start whispering to me, if his generosity is without boundaries and miserliness is impossible, how come your supplication is not answered yet? I said to him, O cursed one, be gone. I neither need you to advise me nor accept you as an advisor. Then I addressed myself, beware of his whispers and suggestions. If delaying the answer of your supplication was only to test you to fight your enemy, shaitan, it would have sufficed as wisdom. The self asked, console me so that I can handle the delay of the answering my supplication. I said, first, it is evident that Allah Most High is the owner, al-Malik of everything, and the owner has the right to give and prevent. And so you have no right to object to his decision. Second, the wisdom, hikmah of Allah is proven by unquestionable proofs. Hence you may assume the benefit, maslahah, in a matter while in fact the wisdom of Allah states otherwise. So you might think something is good for you. So you're asking